Alright, we have a couple more things to add here. I want to put a nose on this guy and some hair. Let's take a look at our images. Okay, this is the Swiss chard. This was for the hair. I'll go ahead and work with this. And again, I think the quick selection tool worked pretty well on selecting this. I don't actually see anything I have to subtract from that or add to it. Looks like it did a really good job. Let's look at it in select and mask. Here we see kind of an, I think that's the, well, it says on black. Okay, it's on black, but I have the opacity turned way down. Looks like maybe there are a couple things. I'm not sure if I really want that, so I'm just going to paint that out using the Alt key. Going to go in and remove that little bit there. That, I think, is actually what it looks like. That is too, but you know, I can make my own decisions about whether I want things or not. Like I could just decide, you know, we're going to make this a little more regular. That actually looks fine. So we're going to go ahead and look at some things with this. I'm going to layer mask this. I'm going to copy it over to the Melon Head. Okay, so again, selecting this using the Move tool, I'm going to drag this layer over, minimize this. Alright, so I'm going to turn this into a smart object, and there are a couple reasons for this. One is that I'm going to be duplicating this to create hair, and each time I duplicate it, I'm going to be transforming it, and I do not want successive transformations to have a cumulative distortion of the image. So I'm going to convert it to a smart object. And I'm going to make this a little skinnier, rotate it, scale it down. I'm going to start over here. Now, this is on top of the hat layers. I want the hat layer on top. Well, I have to go ahead and click OK here. Let's move the hat up. Okay, so I'm working underneath the hat, and so make that smaller. And I'll probably be moving the hat up, but okay, click OK, select this, create a little more space here. And so this is going to be my first hair layer, and I'm going to be duplicating this. So starting there, I'm going to Alt drag this, Alt drag, and I'm going to rotate this a little bit, scale it down, reposition. Now I'm going to create more differentiation between this using like shadowing, but that's pretty good for this one. Again, so that's hair copy. Do another copy. Another rotate. Reposition. Okay, that's okay. Now, because these are smart objects, each one of these is pristine in quality. I'm going to bring this one over here. I'm going to drag this over to, oops, create a reflection of it. Put that right there. Click OK. Alt, drag, make a skinnier one here. Skinny. rotate, and okay. All right, so I think that's enough. Now, I want to create some shading in here to give it a little more volume. So I'm going to go back again to the drop shadow. Drop shadow, I normally don't use drop shadow that much because there are other ways, but I'm kind of highlighting that here as a technique. So I'm going to go in here and do the drop shadow on this guy. Now, I don't want to use the global light because I want to be able to do this independently. So this is going to be a little tighter. So I'm reducing the spread here so it's not casting the shadow very far. And so it's fairly sharp, so the size is not that big. I'm going to position it where it casts a little bit of a shadow on this leaf back here to create a little separation. Okay, so creating some shadow there creates a little bit of depth there that I like. I'm going to make this a little more opaque, so it's a little darker because it's so close. The shadow could be more intense. I'm going to go ahead and say OK there. And I'm going to copy this layer style to the next guy. And not to this guy. Well, if I do that, notice that we have drop shadow on like the background. I mean, that's crazy. But I'm going to copy it here so we have shadow falling on here. Now, for this one, I'm going to open that up and maybe I'm going to select the drop shadow and then click and drag so I can reposition that so I can get exactly what I want there. Okay, so I'm going to say okay. I don't want to futz with that too much, but I do want to have some kind of differentiation here using that. Now, I'm kind of missing the drop shadow on this one. I didn't want the drop shadow because I didn't want a shadow falling on the background. This might be an opportunity to talk about how we could handle this like using other means. To create the same kind of shadow effect that goes exactly where we want, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a layer. And this layer is going to be in multiply mode. And I'm going to take a brush and I am going to Alt-click on a color. So I've selected a shading color like I did before. I'm going to make this brush a little smaller. So right now, like I can draw like this. Undo. What I'm going to do though is put this layer below the hair. Okay, that means that when I draw, I'm drawing below that hair layer that I want. I'm drawing in multiply mode. Well, I have a layer that's in multiply mode. I'm going to bring the opacity of my brush down so I can make a more subtle drawing. But I only want to draw where the melon is. So I'm going to create a selection based on the melon. And there's actually one right here. This layer mask is what I want as my selection. So I'm going to control click on that to load that as a selection. Now that means that anything I draw will only happen within that space. So drawing on this shadow layer, I can go in and brush this in, and I can go out here and nothing will happen. So I'm brushing in a little shadow using my shade color on a layer that is in multiply mode, so it's darkening what's beneath.